Hi, I'm John LeBlanc from Performance Designs, and I'm here to introduce the video of how to pack a Sabre3, and Beau will show you how to do that. We hope you find it helpful.
Hey everyone, this is Beau Riebe again. PD recently released their new Sabre3, and everybody at this company is as equally as excited as you are for you to go jump this wing. But first, we have to pack it. So I'm here today to teach you how to pack the brand new Performance Designs Sabre3. All right, first off, we want to make sure that we have no twists in the steering lines. So let's double check that. What we're going to do is just simply grab the tail of the wing. We're taking all 4 of our steering lines, so we can start at the corner. We're going to grab 1, 2, 3, and 4. And it's pretty easy. You're just holding them together, kind of pinching them in your fingers and running your fingers down toward your rig, so down the lines. The reason for this is it's getting all the twists out of the upper steering lines here. Once they cascade into one line, it's pretty easy to pinch it together and run it all the way down to our toggle. The reason we want to get these twists out of the steering line is because these twists over time can create a memory, or the line can take a memory to it. So we want to make sure that we get these out at the end of every day, or anytime you notice it. If you notice that you have a lot of bad twists in your steering line, take the time, get those twists out. Nice gear maintenance. It's a brand new Canopy. Let's keep it in tip-top shape. So I'm just falling all the way down to the toggle. Once I get down here to the toggle, I kind of take the twist on the bottom side of this guide ring here and then take any twists out. There weren't that many in this, but if you have twists in it, you want to make sure that you get those out. Next up, stow your brake. So you're going to pull this cat eye right here, this loop, through the guide ring. You're going to take the top of the toggle, put it through that cat eye, and then stow the top of the toggle in its little hat right here, the black keeper. Bottom of the toggle goes into the riser. Your risers may not be the exact same as these risers, so just follow the instructions for your specific riser manufacturer on how to stow the toggles onto the riser. They all work in the same idea though. And then lastly, make sure that you are stowing the excess either on the back of the riser or however your riser is designed. You're doing this to make sure that you don't accidentally get any entanglement with that excess there, the brake excess, so that you're not accidentally putting your hand through it or pulling the toggle through it when you go to unstow your brake. I see it happen all the time. It's best to just take a couple extra seconds, stow it neatly on the back, and then not have to worry about it again. I'm simply taking my steering lines and placing them over my first finger, and then I'm separating the rear risers and the front risers all in different fingers. That way when I run up toward the canopy, I can tell if I have any inversions, any issues, but everything looks straight and continuous. Okay, next up, I'm gonna put all the lines over one shoulder. Some people choose to pack a little bit differently. They will take the lines and put them over both shoulders like that. It's perfectly okay, as long as you're accomplishing the same goal. I just prefer to pack over one shoulder. It's easier for me, but do whatever works best for you. If you're here and you notice that you have a lot of slop in your lines, or they're not very taut, try and take the time now to really get all that excess up here towards the canopy, pulling it up. That way our lines can be nice and tight from the rig. We're trying to maintain good line tension through this whole pack job. Always applying a little bit of pressure away from the rig. That's why it helps if you put a packing weight on your rig or in the tray or something like that, just to hold it in place. That way I can apply a little bit of pressure away from the rig to help keep these lines taut. All right, next up, this is a 9-cell canopy. So I'm going to separate the 9 cells of the nose over here on my left side. So I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. And then I like to kind of hold the canopy like this, like allowing a bit of the fabric between the line groups to just kind of lay in place before I start the flaking process. Next up, I'm going to turn the parachute 90 degrees so I can put the nose between my knees. When I do that, I'm just placing just enough fabric to hold it there. I don't want to shove too much of that fabric back there, just enough to hold it in place between my knees, and then I'm pinching them together. Helps hold everything in place. From here on out, we're just going to be flaking the canopy. So flaking is where you're separating the fabric in between our line groups. We're trying to get the fabric to the outside of the wing and keep the line groups neat and on the inside of the wing. So in here, I've got my 5 A lines right here. We're gonna have 5 lines on each side for this. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then my 5 B lines are going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So I'm gonna take my hand and just separate that. Give a little flake out, just like that. Trying to find this seam right here and match it up with the lines that are going up my shoulders. And then I can also take my hand and run it down toward the bottom of the parachute. That's helping to kind of create this really nice fold right here. That's going to help with the rest of the pack job. Also pushes a bit of air out at the beginning. Just sets us up for success later. Okay, next up is the lines between my B, or the fabric between my B lines and my C lines. So you've probably noticed that I kept the slider down here rather than putting it over my shoulder, which some people at drop zones will do that. If you choose to do that, again, that's perfectly okay. But the reason that I like to keep it down in the canopy is that it's a packing aid. So now to get the fabric between my B lines and my C lines, it's simply the fabric between the front grommet and the rear grommet. So I just separate the grommets, I push the slider to the side so I can see what's going on in here, and then I know exactly where the fabric is. Pretty simple to just use this slider as a packing aid. So once I flake that fabric to the side, I again find that same style seam as before. It should line up with the lines up here, and then I should be able to push down, get some air out, help make a nice good fold on this side. All right, next up is to flake the lines between our C lines and our D lines. So in order to identify that, sometimes it's challenging because you have steering lines in there too. There's a lot of lines going on down in this area. So what I like to tell people to do to help them is just follow from our slider stop, which is this little puck right here. Follow the binding tape along the edge of the parachute. Keep following it past this first line. Oh, you're gonna notice a little snap. We'll get to that in a moment. But keep going past that. Just keep following that binding tape. All right, here's our first steering line. So from our first steering line, we follow the tail of the wing. We follow it to our second steering line. Keep following the tail. Third steering line. Boom, fourth steering line. Once we have our 4 steering lines, I just put it over my wrist. I can kind of hold it out of the way. And then it's a lot easier to identify our D lines, which are the 5 hanging really low, and our C lines, which are the 5 that are a bit more neatly together right here. So then I can separate my D and my C lines, give a good flake, getting the fabric to the outside, the lines to the inside. And then I can take the steering lines, put them back kind of in the same general direction as the rest of the lines, and I'm going to move on to the right side of the canopy. And also, you don't need to do anything too fancy with the fabric between our steering lines, except for notice the cool tail ribs that are on there. That's these extra stitches that you probably haven't seen on a previous canopy in this category. They're a sweet new feature. They give really good, efficient flight and an awesome, awesome, awesome bottom end flare. So notice that, smile about that. Sabre3 is awesome. Okay, moving on to the right side. I'm just gonna do the exact same thing as I did on the left side. So I'm flaking between my A and the B's. I'm gonna do it a little bit quicker because I don't have to talk about it, but just a couple really cool flight characteristics of the Sabre3. They design the openings, they redesign them to have a bit more of a stage deployment. So it uses a little bit less altitude and it's a bit more staged through the opening, which helped to minimize the end cell closure that we saw as a common thing on Sabre2s. So that should help with that. And then next up is the flight, the handling of the wing. It has an awesome control range. It's very, very intuitive to fly. We've gotten really good feedback on people just feeling like it does what they want it to do. It goes where they want it to go because it's just got this really nice, crisp handling and intuitive control range. And then last, it's a PD canopy. The bottom end flare is ridiculous. So it'll touch you down soft with a smile on your face every time. Okay, so I flaked the right side of the canopy. Next up, another new feature of this parachute is snaps on the slider. If you've never seen these before, they can be confusing. What are they? Why are they there? You're gonna see there's 2 snaps on the back of the slider. There's 2 snaps on the stabilizers. Take the slider, simply connect the slider snap to the stabilizer snap on the left side and the right side. And then there's also 2 snaps on the nose of the parachute. So I release the nose. I'm gonna turn it so I can see it. I'm going to take the slider, which is in the center cell, and pull it out the width of this binding tape right here. And then I'm going to locate the snap, which is on the center cell of the nose, and connect it to the snap, its respective snap on the slider. Same with the other side. Snap the nose to the slider, boom, 4 snaps, all done. So, takes 15 seconds, snap them up, it'll help lead to good openings. Then the last thing I want to do with the slider before I grab the tail and move forward is to make sure I have a nice quarter. So I did the snaps. Next up, I'm going to take my hands and I'm going to take them left and right in between my front and rear line groups. And then I'm also going to do the same thing front to back. So I'm just going to make sure that front to back, the slider is exposed about the width of this binding tape. If you've done the snaps, it already should be. And same in the tail. And then the last thing with the slider is I just take a hand, I push that slider fabric as deep into the parachute as I can without messing up the nice quarter that I just did. And that simply holds the slider deep down into that parachute, so when I'm laying on the ground and cocooning everything, there's friction on that slider holding it in place. Remember, we want the slider at the top of the lines to do its job. We want these grommets mated with these slider stops all the way up here. If all that looks good, then the slider has the best chance of doing its job properly. Cool, moving forward. I'm going to lift the parachute up with one hand so I can reach around and find the center cell, which is the one with the warning label right there. Nice thing about all PD canopies is the warning label is perfectly centered on the center cell, so you can always tell which cell is the middle one. So I'm gently going to bring this up here and around, and then I'm going to use a knee, trying to hold the rest of the canopy in place as I bring this top skin around. Just like that. Okay, and then for cocooning the canopy. Okay, we were double checking, we're pulling these seams together and double checking that all of these seams for the tail ribs are symmetrical and even. That gives us an identifier that the canopy is symmetrical, that this top skin is symmetrical. And then we're gonna do one roll and then a second roll. We don't need to do any more than that, just like that, just two to three to help hold everything in place. So we want to avoid it being really tight. We want to avoid it being rolled up too much. Again, just kind of 2 or 3 good rolls symmetrically at the top and the bottom with my left and right hand. Okay, next up, I'm going to turn the parachute again back toward me. I'm still holding with my bottom hand, applying a little bit of pressure downward. That helps hold everything up here in place. And then once I'm comfortable that this is way up on my shoulder, I let go, because now I'm going to push some air out of the canopy. You obviously don't have to do this at this point, but I find it just makes it easier once I lay it on the ground to already have some air out of this parachute. So I'm just kind of stroking it downward like this, pushing downward, applying a little bit of pressure. I'm trying to use some finesse, I'd say, like be kind of gentle with it so that you don't mess up everything you've done. But if you can get some air out of the parachute right now, it's going to make the job easier once you lay it on the ground. Awesome. Cool. And then I'm going to reach back with my right hand and grab that fold that I created on the bottom side. and apply pressure downward. And from here, I just put the parachute on my forearm, just like that, rather than slapping it on the ground. Rest it on my forearm, and then gently place that green monster on the floor. Before I get on the ground, I'm gonna cock my pilot chute. So grab the handle of your pilot chute, gently step on your deployment bag to hold it in place, and then apply tension pulling outward with the handle, which should create the pilot chute to grab air and do its job. Okay. All right, everybody's favorite part, getting the air out, putting it in the D-bag. So how we get the air out of the canopy is actually incredibly important to how easily it gets into the deployment bag. So we want to maintain control of the fabric. We want to try and really keep it nice and compressed, really tight hold on the fabric the entire time. If we start letting go of it, if we get off of it, if we're taking our hands on and off and on and off, then the fabric's going to start to re-expand, go loosey-goosey. It's going to be then much more challenging to put this in that D-bag. But you're going to see the method that I tend to teach. People have really good, they tend to be very successful with it. And then as long as you keep the canopy nice and contained, it goes in the D-bag quite a bit easier. So first off, I'm just going to take my knees. I'm going to set them gently on the slider grommets or right next to them, right here near the warning label. And then how I do this is I'm going to take my left forearm, I'm going to put it right over my knees. I'm going to slide it up about 6 to 8 inches. I'm going to take my right hand, I'm going to kind of scoop the fabric underneath my left arm and then push down again with my left arm. And then I'm going to repeat the same thing on the other side. So right forearm down, go up and match my forearms, take my left hand, scoop. And then I'm just going to repeat all the way up the canopy, just like that. So left forearm goes down, slides up 6 to 8 inches, right hand scoops some of that fabric under, left forearm pushes down, right forearm comes down, up to match where the left arm is, left hand comes, scoops under. And then I just work my way up the canopy, 6 to 8 inches at a time, never letting go, always maintaining control from one side or another. My knees are always in place, which helps to keep tension on the tail of the canopy in that area. And it's especially nice once you get up here because it's a lot more contained. It's a lot easier to just take one hand and just kind of push some of that air out. So I can just take one hand and I'm still holding tension with my right forearm here, but I can just pretty easily push that air out with my one hand there. Keep working my way up. Trying to get this cocoon about the width of the deployment bag, maybe a little bit wider to help fill out the corners of the bag. Boom, and then once I get to the top, I don't let go. I keep control of it, I keep pressure on it. I've got my left hand here at the top, controlling everything, my knees down here. This is all nice and tight. That's what I want to see. If I let go with this left hand now, it would all just go poof and start to expand, and then it would be a nightmare. So don't do that. Okay, so next up, I need to figure out how to do S-folds without letting go of things. So I need to use both my hands to do the S-folds. So I'm going to replace pressure from this hand with these legs. How I do that is I take my right hand, I slide it in between my knees, put pressure down on the grommets there and on the warning label. And now I can take my left shin and just gently set it at the top. Just like that. So now I've kind of switched positions, but now I'm able to use both my hands to do this first warning label. So now I've replaced, or I've totally switched positions. Now I'm controlling the grommet and the warning label area with my right hand, shin up here with my left leg, and now I've got both my hands to do this first S-fold. So my general rule of thumb is put my left hand right about the top of the warning label. and do the S-fold over that. This is a 150 Sabre3. On larger canopies like 190s, 210s, you may have to make that first S-fold a little bit larger by sliding your hand up more because the canopy itself is just bigger. On smaller parachutes, it may get a little bit smaller. Good general area to start though, top of the warning label. That's where I always like to do it, pretty much. Just like this. So I'm gonna place my left hand here, apply some pressure. I'm gonna take the fabric here, just fold it over my left hand, just like that. Kind of sneak my left hand out of there. Once the fabric gets there, to replace it, apply pressure from the top, hold it in place. Okay, so I'm quickly going to take my leg off, take my hand under, try and pinch both sides of the fabric together. See, now I can see where I'm pinching together and both sides are moving. And I'm going to flop it or gently fold it on top of my right hand as I move my right hand out, and then take my right hand, gently fold everything back on top. So there's my S-folds right there. And now I take my legs and I like to straddle both sides of the parachute. So I'm still applying pressure down with my left hand, and as I'm taking this top fold and starting to put pressure down with my right hand, I take my left hand out, and then I'm always trying to apply a bit of pressure straight downward because I know those slider grommets are directly in the middle, straight downward. I'm trying to keep pressure on the slider grommets, trying to prevent any of that stuff from moving, because if the slider is in its place properly, then it will help to control the openings. So I'm here, I'm applying a little bit of pressure downward. I want to contain this excess up here, but it's pretty easy to do. So how I do it is I kind of scrunch it up like this, and then you take your top skin, just pull it over and tuck everything underneath. So it creates this nice corner. So it went from this to this in, a pretty simple move. So then to do it on the left side, I just try and keep my arm here to control that side. Start to tuck everything down. Take this top skin fabric, just kind of pulling it without trying to mess everything up. Boom. Just like that. Yep. So then it's pretty simple for me to, even though it's a brand new parachute, never been jumped, pretty easy for me to control everything because it's all contained under single pieces of fabric rather than having a bunch of fabric going everywhere that's super loose. If everything is contained and under control, then I can manage it and get it in the bag easier. So now to put this in there, I just lay the bag out directly above the parachute with the flap facing down, and then I'm going to I like to split the pilot chute attachment here and almost rock the canopy upward, which helps me slide the flap of the bag underneath the parachute, just enough that the opening is still exposed. And I'm going to put one corner of the bag, or one corner of the canopy in the bag at a time. So I'm going to pull this bag around to get this corner in. I like to look for about a 45-degree angle between my center line, which is right here, and the bag, which is right here. That means that I've got the bag about, I've got this corner going in at about 45 degrees right there. I should be able to pretty easily pull the left side of the bag around the left side of the canopy. When you're bagging the parachute, try and think about, instead of putting the canopy into the bag, maybe think about pulling the bag around the canopy. It's one way to think about it that might make it easier. So then when I take my left hand off, I'm replacing control with my right leg, gently holding it. I'm not applying too much pressure down, just gently holding it in place. Before I take my left hand out, I'm going to control everything with my right hand. Take my left hand out, clean up this side as needed, give it a nice good pinch together, and then I'm going to pull this bag around the left side of the parachute. And then the last trick is take the flap down here and really cinch it up. And again, before I take my left hand out and let go of everything, I use my right hand to hold it all in place as I take my left hand out. So now the canopy is pretty comfortably in the bag. I don't really want to just let it go because it is a new parachute and it is kind of slippery. So I am still holding things in place, applying pressure, trying to keep control of it. This is when I'm going to flip around and start doing my line stows. Okay, so I'm rolling the bag over, trying to compress everything to the inside, use gravity as needed to help get this rubber band to this grommet. Flip it, and then I'm going to pull up on the rubber band and then pull it off toward me, which kind of helps keep the bag closed. And again, I'm getting any excess in the lines up above the line stow so that everything is nice and tight from here on out. And then I'm doing about 1.5 inch to 2.5 inch stow. I'm going to double stow it. Just go around my thumb once, around my thumb twice. When I take my thumb out, I just hold that stow in place to help prevent any lines from coming with. And I'm going to do the same thing on the next side. So I'm going to get the rubber band through the stow, or through the grommet, hold it in place, boom. 1.5 inch to 2.5 inches. There's my thumb, go around my thumb, twice, boom. All right, so on most deployment bags, everyone that I've seen, you work your way from the inside grommets and you go outward. Some bags have 2 grommets, some bags have 4 grommets, some bags have 3 grommets. Follow the specific directions of the manufacturer of your deployment bag. So I'm applying a bit of back tension on that last stow I just made. And then once I have the stow on the other side, come over and make the stow, double wrap it. Again, applying a bit of back tension on that stow that I just made, creating the stow across, making it about 1.5 inch to 2.5 inches, finding my rubber band, and then boom, there we are, just like that.